So actually, I'll hand it over to my assistant. Their handsome assistant. All right. Now we're going to move to the savory portion. So today we're going to make a beautiful frittata. You say frittata, I say frittata. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to preheat my skillet. Ron Penner gave me these. He gave me a set of 3, and I love them and use them all the time. On a medium heat, I'm going to start getting it warm, and it's dry. So we're going to do a little trick. When we're making food for a group, we want to do things in and out of order. For example, we're going to have toasted pepitas later on. So I'm going to take advantage of a hot skillet, and I'm going to toast them while we're waiting. The pepitas are great. They're raw pumpkin seeds, and you can smell them when they start to cook. They will tell you when they're ready. All right, so here's some of the items that we're going to use for our frittata. We've got leeks. We've got baby bella mushrooms. We've got some beautiful baby spinach. We have a whole dozen beautiful organic eggs. We have some Gruyere cheese. I pre-grated some already. And we have a little dash of sour cream. And as always, salt and pepper. My assistant, would you do me a favor and snap a picture of all this stuff? This is what I like to call the mise en place. That's what the French say. In the meantime, just make sure this gets a little mise en place. Now your pepitas, if you happen to like a lot of salt, you can pre-salt them, but I just leave them raw and toasted. I like to add seasoning as we go. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to make some space here. We're going to get our leeks done. Leeks are giant onions, and they're fantastic, but they are filthy. So one of the little tricks we do is we want to make sure we cut them. And these guys, they're so big. I'm just going to cut them. I pre-rinsed them, but I didn't finish. Let's see. Can we see okay here? Thanks, honey. There we go. And I cut them down the center. That way I can have smaller pieces. I find the smaller they are, the easier they are to clean, and they also cook a lot quicker. All right, so we're going to just do one. And then for this, I just add some water. And I'm going to make sure that it gets very rinsed, because sometimes you see there's little dirt and pockets of, things that just don't get cleaned properly in the inner folds. So I'm going to throw those in a bowl, and I'm going to add some cold water, and I'm going to let them soak for a minute. And that will help flush out all the extra pieces of dirt. Now, you can do this ahead of time. I just wanted to demonstrate the little tricks and hacks. And I always like to use, thankfully I have a little filtered water in my sink. So I like to use the cleanest water possible whenever I'm rinsing any of my vegetables. And you can just see it starting to get all the little bits and pieces out of there. I'm just going to let it soak for a minute while we work on our next bit, which will be, these pepitas. These look great. So I'm going to carefully take them off. There we go. So I don't want them to burn. I just want them to lightly toast. Give them a little, that's nice. Maybe just half a minute more. All right. We also have some spinach that needs to get cut. Just a little coarse chop. And that can go right back in the bowl, taking advantage of our time. Boom. Okay. These guys feel good. All right. This guy is now going to get drained. They just rinse for a couple of seconds. And I just leave them in a little bowl here to keep draining. It's best when you're doing items that are wet and oil. They don't match. So we want to try and dry those up as much as possible. Boom, boom, boom. All right. This guy's heavy. All right. Now this is already preheated, which is wonderful. I'm going to add a little bit of grapeseed oil. You can use olive oil. You can even use butter. I mean, why not? I'm going to be fairly generous with this because later on I'm going to be adding mushrooms and And the eggs, of course, and we want to make sure that everything gets a little crispness on it. And I'm just going to do a nice coarse chop. Mushrooms, you can use those beautiful large portobello mushrooms. Those are gorgeous. But you have to do the ribbing that's inside of it. I think it's best to scrape that off with a spoon. Whereas if you use the baby bellas, which are also called creminis, they lend itself really nicely to this dish. All right, and then you can rinse or just take one of those fancy mushroom brushes and get rid of all of the dust and the dirt that tends to accumulate. Or you can just use a damp paper towel. Love that sound. And wipe off the edges of your mushrooms just to get rid of all the dirt that tends to grow on there. All right, beautiful. Oh, it's already smelling great. All right. So I'm going to adjust my heat down just a tiny bit. And these we're just going to let sweat down for a couple of minutes. All right. Turn that down. Sometimes that first sizzle is pretty noisy. So while this is starting to sweat down, I'm going to start moving my focus onto my eggs. I've already pre-cracked a dozen eggs. Like I said, these are nice organic ones, free-range, the whole ball of wax. If you're just cooking for yourself and you have a smaller pan, just half this recipe. And again, season to taste accordingly. You can use organic cheese. There's a cashew cheese that's, I'm trying to limit my dairy, so I have this lovely cashew mozzarella cheese. That's really good. But today we're gonna go full fat, because why not? It's a patty. That's right, it's a birthday party. This is a great excuse. May I borrow your drink? Let's have a toast. Birthday toast, yay RCB! Cheers. Thank you, assistant. Yum. Okay, these are nicely sweated. I'm gonna add to that first the mushrooms, because they're gonna take a little bit longer to cook as well. Spinach just takes a hot minute, so there we go. We do these in stages. So what's nice about the cast iron grill is that it cooks stovetop and then magically in the oven. Make sure your oven is preheated to 350 degrees. That way we can have a nice hot oven to put this into to finish, because we're gonna let the oven do the rest of the job. I like to lightly season things as I cook them. That way I can control not adding too much salt and pepper to the finished product. All right, these are starting to sweat down really nicely. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of sour cream. There's my other little spatula. If you're trying to go easy on your dairy, you can use, you can omit this step altogether. There's also cashew yogurt, there's almond yogurt, there's all kinds of that fun stuff. All right, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of cream. This just gives a little bit of decadence. You can use creme fraiche. You can use half and half. You can use milk. You can even just use water if you wanna extend it. So I'm just gonna make sure I'm trying to get all those little lumps out of the sour cream. It's just gonna make it really gooey and delicious. Keeping my eye on this. By the way, I don't know if you have some of these wonderful little tools, gadgets. This is a heat-resistant spatula, and it can take up to 500 degrees temperature. So I really love using a spatula to work with eggs and other items. Look at that. Those look really beautiful, and they smell great. So now I'm going to finish with my spinach. I don't know if I need all of that much, so I'm going to reserve a little bit. It cooks down to almost nothing, so if you think you need more, again, do it to taste. If you don't like spinach, or if you are a little sensitive to spinach, you do not have to have them. That's okay. Your kitchen, your rules. You're the boss. All right, well, that's starting to sweat down. I'm going to grab some beautiful fresh parsley. Just going to add a little bit of that. And we're going to have dill for a couple of other recipe. So I love dill with eggs. So I'm just gonna pinch a little bit off of it and just kind of throw that in there. And Jeanette Stapp, our wonderful hostess, last time she came, she gave me some beautiful chives from her garden. So I'm gonna give them a second life here. I like to improvise. And what's in the refrigerator? Use up what you have. Eggs are such a wonderful, forgiving dish for that kind of an addition. You've got some bell pepper that are starting to go bad? Perfect. Add it to a frittata. Works every time. All right, so that's gorgeous. We're gonna reserve a little bit of chives for a garnish. And I'm going to also add a little bit of fresh parsley to it. I just love herbs. They add this freshness to things and brightness, and the color is so pretty. All right, so I'm gonna put all of the parsley and some of the chives in my eggs. There we go. Look at how pretty already that's starting to look. I love it. Give me herbs or give me death. Okay, now I see that the spinach is almost finished. I see my oven is already hot and ready to go. And I think we're just about there. So right before you add your eggs, you just kind of want to reposition your base to it, because we're not going to do a lot of stirring once we put this in there. I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit higher. Give the eggs one last little stir. And in they go. It's going to be wonderful. Now I can turn this off. Oh, thank goodness. That wonderful sound of silence. Okay, so with this, with my heat-resistant spatula, I'm just going to go gently around the edges just to make sure everything is kind of seated nicely. There's no pockets. And I'm going to let the temperature do its job. All right, so it's going to go on there for maybe 5-6 minutes, just enough to start setting around the edges. So while this is setting, we're going to put our attention to something else. Always a great excuse. Oh, I forgot the cheese. My goodness. Half of the cheese goes in now. Wouldn't that be horrible to forget the cheese? Half the cheese can go right on top of it. There we go. And then maybe I'll just use this to judge. How could I forget the cheese? I guess I told you I'm trying to be no dairy. It's so hard. All right. So that's about a half a cup of cheese or so. Maybe I'll add a little more. You can add it while you're doing the eggs. I kind of like it on the top because it's going to give that pretty little crust factor. When we check it, I'm going to reserve some of that cheese. We'll check it a little bit later on. And if it needs a little more for creaminess, then we'll add it, along with our wonderful chives. So we're going to set that aside. I'm going to put my little chives aside. This will help remind me that I want to look at this later. So he's going to go down here. Okay. Again, a great excuse to clean a little bit. There we go. All right. While the frittata is working, we're going to go to our next starring event, and that is our salmon. Yay, salmon. Here is a giant fillet of salmon. If you don't want to have a whole side of the fillet, you can cut it smaller. I love the look of the larger presentation, but if you were to cut it smaller, you can start by getting rid of this lovely underbelly. This is what the sushi people love. That's the little underbelly area. And then do your fillets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can get a lot of fish out of this. But I love the presentational look of this, especially for a group brunch with all of our friends. So to this, I've already rinsed it. I've made sure that there were no bones in it. And I patted it dry. You want to make sure that there's any impurities off of that. Okay, so to this, I'm just going to add, you can add a little drizzle of grapeseed oil, olive oil, whatever. Maybe I'll add a tiniest bit. But you don't always have to have extra fat. You know, if you're trying to get rid of the COVID-15, you don't have to have it, right? So to this, I'm just going to add a little bit of my salt and pepper. Don't you love this little gadget? Steve gave this to me. Conversely, you can always use a little pinch pot make sure that everything just gets a little bit of some seasonings, all right? To that, we're gonna add the zest of a lemon. Where's mine? Oh, there we go. The zester's over here. We're gonna add the zest of a lemon. So a little trick I think most of you already know. If you've seen any of my classes, I always purport you want to give your citrus a little bit of a squeeze or a little bit of a roll that brings out all that beautiful juices and the brightness in it. And I don't like wasting zest because I'm going to also use this lemon for garnish when I'm baking it. All right, so I'm going to keep my half of an eye on my frittata. It's coming along so nicely. Maybe I'll take a little peek at it. Again, you just want to make sure that the edges are starting to firm up. Yep, and I'm just kind of pushing it around there. Wonderful. Okay, crank that up just a tiny bit more. For the garnish, the rest of this, I'm going to add some fresh dill from my little pinch pot here. Let's do some big pieces. And I like just using my favorite cooking gadget, my hands. I just pinch them apart, put some nice pretty pieces on it so it has a nice pseudo-even coating of it. Maybe a couple of bigger pieces to give it a little garnish for later on when I'm going to present it. There we go. Just make sure everything is on there. And to that I'll add a little bit of lemon. So this is the same lemon that I zested, waste not, want not. Just going to cut it a little bit on an angle. And I'm going to make some wheels. And then from the wheels, I'm going to cut the wheels in half. So a little goes a long way. And I'm just going to place a few of these on there. I find that when you add a little citrus into your baked goods of salmon, it just adds an extra little bit of brightness. Plus, it's pretty as heck, isn't it? Done. And then don't waste the cap. Give it a little squeeze. Done. That's all you need to do. It goes in the 350-degree oven for 8 to 12 minutes. This is going to go in for about 25 minutes, so we're going to share the oven. So I am a big fan, as Daniel knows, of timers. Pop this guy right in. I'm going to put him on the bottom shelf, actually, because I need more room for the top one. And I'm going to set a timer for 12. I'm going to set it for 10. That way I can take a look at it. I find if you set timers a little bit sooner rather than later, especially when you're baking multiple things in an oven, it's good to keep your eye on it and adjust the timing accordingly. All right, I'm going to use this lime again. This guy's ready to go in the oven. Ready, set. It's so heavy. This one I should have my handsome assistant help me with this. All right, you see how it's kind of set? There we go. In it goes, 350. Turning off the heat there. And I'm going to set a separate timer for 20 minutes. Boom, and start. Okay, you'll be happy that you set timers, trust me. While the salmon and the frittata are both in there, we're going to move on to our wonderful tzatziki. Now, tzatziki is a Greek yogurt dip that many of you know and are familiar with and have probably made. I sent you a recipe. The recipe is great because you can use that you can grate it, you can let it strain and work overnight. So you have an option to do that. Since you have that recipe, I figured, why don't I show you a different way for a different recipe that's a lot quicker. So if this was a last minute friend coming over, kind of a dinner or a meal, this dip is just as delicious. So I take about a half a cup, 3/4 cup, however much yogurt you think you'll like. I'm going to start with a little bit at first. I'm going to give it a little good stir to make sure I get all the lumps out. I'm going to take another lemon and add a little bit of lovely lemon zest to it. Oops, give it a little, gotta give it the rub. And give it a little bit of zest. Then take a little bit of juice. You know the test, right? The paper cut test. You squeeze about 1/2 of a lemon. We used the one from earlier to get all of the juice out of that. And I reserve, this way I can catch the seeds. Very easy. I call it the paper cut test because if you have a paper cut, you'll know it. All right, now give that just a little bit of a roll. Oh, the frittata, 20 to 25 minutes, just like your recipe says. But again, if you used a smaller pan or if you're sharing the oven like we are with the salmon, we're gonna check it. I set the timer for 20 minutes. It will probably need a little longer, but I know that the salmon's not gonna take more than 12 minutes. All right, so I added just a little crack of salt and pepper, and now I'm gonna add some cucumber. So I take the caps off of the cucumber. You see me throwing things into the side. I have a little catch bowl that I use for mulching. So a lot of the foods that we have here will either go in the green bin or it will go in a soup. Like I probably wouldn't put cucumber in a soup, but there's a lot of the herb bits and pieces that I like to add to it. So I will show you again what I just did there. I cut a chunk of the Persian cucumbers off. Persian cucumbers are great because they don't have a lot of seeds. The seeds that do have are very soft and very easy to digest and to chew. And also the skin is so very thin and fine. It is a great all-purpose cucumber. Also English cucumbers, very much the same, just a little bit longer from a different continent. Okay, so I took the half and I cut them in quadrants. So it's got 4 little julienne type pieces. And then I'm gonna make thin slices. I like this dip. It's a little bit quicker, but it's got more texture. Sometimes salmon is so creamy and smooth. I like adding a little crunch factor to my cucumber dip. So I'm not gonna put all of it in it. I may or may not use it all. We're gonna do it to taste. So it has lemon juice, salt, pepper, cucumber, the zest of a lemon, and then we're gonna add, of course we're gonna add dill. Here's our beautiful star again. I like how we can keep repurposing a lot of the same elements into one meal. And there's still gonna be plenty of leftovers for dinner tonight, lunch tonight, breakfast tomorrow. So a quick hack, some of you already know this, when you're cutting and shaving off some herbs, is you grab it by the stem area and you just kind of rub your knife over it and pull back. That way you can get just a little pinch of the herb. And if there's a couple larger ones that get in there, go ahead and tug them out. That sounded dirty. I think it's time for a drink. Hand me that drink. Cheers. RCB. Cheers. That's delicious. Now, by the way, this is when you would start adding a little more of your beer to it. Or maybe you've already finished yours. I don't know, make another. Okay, there you go. Thank you, Susha. So I just really very easily chopped up some dill. It's what you call a coarse chop. And I'm gonna add it all in there. I like the flavor of dill. So good, so bright. And it really pairs itself well with all of the ingredients that we're having for our brunch today. There we go. Now this is just gonna sit and steep. Maybe I'll wanna taste it and see if I need to adjust the seasonings accordingly. I'm not touching it. It's really good. We have a lot of brightness in from the zest and a lot of brightness in from the lemon juice. That beautiful unctuousness, that's a big word, of the dill just gives a lot of depth of flavor. And I'm going to let it sit because the longer it sits, the better flavor it's going to be. All right. We're going to tidy up a little and get ready for our next bit. Now, since I'm going to reserve a little bit of cucumber as my garnish, but I want to stir this again, I'm going to set this garnish aside because it's going to look pretty, right? We eat with our eyes. All right, we're cleaning up the mess. And I think our last thing on our list before making our feast is going to be our salad. Now, what could be easier than a beautiful bright arugula salad, you ask? Nothing could be easier. Well, I always got to make it a little tricky. Here we go. Our ingredients are arugula if you want, a lettuce of your choice. I went through my refrigerator and I saw I had some beautiful romaine and some mixed field greens and some baby spinach. So I blended all of that together. Then we're going to have, I'm using Dijon. You can use any mustard. If you don't like mustard, you don't have to have it. All right. And we're going to use a little bit of white wine vinegar and some more lemon. You see, I love lemon. He's a starring attraction. All right, I'm going to recycle some of my goodies. Now, for the dressing, this is a great little tip. You know how oftentimes we get those smoothie containers and they come with that little metal ball? Well, I discovered if you add it to for salad dressing, shake and shake up, now you've got freshly incorporated or emulsified dressing every time. So I just blend it right in here. We're gonna go for a little garlic. I'm going easy on garlic today for my sous chef here. He's not a big fan of too much garlic. So if you wanted to add garlic to the salmon, as in the recipe, please do. I think it's beautiful in salmon, but you don't have to have it. So I just took a garlic clove and I smashed the heck out of it, and that's gonna really break up those wonderful flavors. I would really recommend mincing it a lot when you have it in dressing, because you want the flavor of garlic, but you don't necessarily want that bite. Did you see that? Oh. All right, and I just heard the timer announce that it is going to be ready to check my salmon. I set it for 10 minutes, so 10 minutes has passed so quickly, hasn't it? Let's take a peek, and we'll see how it looks. Oh, and I'm looking at my frittata. It's coming out beautifully. So here's the salmon. I can see it needs a little bit more time. So I'm going to rotate it at this point. And you know what? Since it's out already, let's add a little garlic to it anyway. So you saw I just gave it a pound. The paper comes right off, boom, into the bin. And I'm going to make some thin, long strips. And I'm just going to sprinkle it on. There we go. Now this timer I'm going to put on for another, let's try 6 minutes. How to know more time?
For salmon, how do you know if it needs more time?
Oh, that's an excellent question, sous chef. Well, I can tell because it's still very pink and there's a lot of juices coming out. Now the salmon belly, that is very close. I could even take that out and have a snack if I wanted to, but that would be rude not to invite you. This is going back in, the timer's on. I can see my frittata looks gorgeous. It's already almost ready to be set. This is a great time if you wanted to add a little more cheese to the top. I think I'm gonna close this. I might add those beautiful, where did I put you? Oh, there you are. I'll add a little bit of that reserved cheese and the chives on top. That'll give it a little more chance to brown and crispen. Wow, that's gonna be, I guess I'm not dairy free right now. Why not? It's brunch. It's RCB's birthday. Time to have another sip. Go, do it. All right, he's going back in and I'm gonna check my timer. It's gonna go off in just a few minutes, so I think I'm going to time it with my salmon. All right, back to our dressing. So I'm gonna add, you always add your acid elements first when you make a dressing. So I'm gonna add in a plunge of Dijon, a nice healthy plunge. I really love Dijon. And then I'm gonna add, of course, you know I'm gonna have more lemon. Just give it a nice roll, of course. Now is a great excuse, maybe to use some of the zest. Why not? I never like to miss out on an excuse to have some zest. And we'll give it a little squeeze. Some lemons are a little bit bigger. I have a lemon squeezer, but this is a lime squeezer, and I already got it dirty. So why do I want to dirty up another kitchen utensil? There we go. So this is the juice. I'm going to do the juice of 1 whole lemon. It's going to be very, very, very bright. But this is going to make a lot of dressing yield for later on in the week when we want to have more salad. All right, so then I'm going to add a little bit of acid. That's the white wine vinegar. Just a little zhuzh like that. About a 1/4 cup or so, depending to taste. There's so much brightness of the lemon juice. I don't really need to add too much. So I'm gonna shake up all the acids, all the liquids together. Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Now I'm gonna take this off, and now I'm gonna begin with some seasonings. So, salt and pepper. So much easier to use a pinch bowl for this than that cute little thing. You're always gonna need more salt than you think. And this is a very acidic recipe, so I'm adding more than and I love pepper. So I'm gonna put a lot of pepper in that too. It's about a teaspoon or so of each. But another little trick, a little bit for the pot, a little salt and pepper in the lettuce. Yum. Okay, olive oil. So it didn't go over. You can use olive oil. You can use vegetable oil. You can use grapeseed oil. You can use avocado oil. You can omit oil if you're not having oil. Just what it is the lemon juice is going to be enough liquid. You can also add a little bit of water to it too if you are really sensitive to adding too much fats to your diet. That was about, you see the ratio. There's a lot of the acidic qualities and not a lot of olive oil in this, all right? I'm just gonna shake it and let that little ball do all the work. It's gonna emulsify it. You can also use a similar recipe in your blender, food processor, or whatnot if you wanna make a big batch. Why buy salad dressing when you can make it? It's so easy. That's it. That's all she wrote. All right, the last element for our, at least for the cutting portion of our salad, is going to be beautiful green apple, green olives. I must be thinking of my Micheletta. So I just rotated it off. I took the sides off. Here, I'll give this to my handsome attendant. You can eat it. And I'm just gonna put some nice, long, thin slices. This is a great little tip for when you do apple pies or apple tarts. That way you have a nice flat surface so things aren't rolling around. Now, you can add this to some acidulated water. It's a fancy term for a bowl that has a little bit of lemon juice and some water in it. But since we are going to eat this right away, I'm just gonna put them right in the salad. And you can use as little or as least amount of apples as you like. And then we're gonna top it with our beautiful toasted pepitas that we did not terribly long ago, and sprinkle to taste. How gorgeous is that? Bright and fresh. To this you can add some raspberries or strawberries, or if it's in the winter, maybe a little more robust, some cranberries and pear instead of apple. Your kitchen, your rules. Okay, beautiful. How's everybody else doing? Everybody's got enough? Yay, wonderful. And with that, our timer just went off. I'm gonna turn off my timer. I'm gonna clear off all the heat because I know everything is ready. So, I'm gonna take this excuse to clear off my table. Everybody's got a fork ready? All right. Oops, this is gonna be heavy. All right, this gorgeous frittata. Wow. He is super heavy. Look at that. If I turn this light off, maybe you could see it better. And then our salmon. Oh, beautiful. Now you can do this similar recipe on the grill. You just have to maybe put it on some foil instead. Foil might be a little bit better. There we go. Look at that. Wowza. Let me put it nice and close so you can see it better. And you can tell it's done because it has now got the look all the way through. It's more congealed. I'll put it even up here so you can see better. Oh, thank you, Derek and Daniel. Applause. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to let these things cool for a few moments. I'm going to grab a platter. We're going to grab forks and knives. Now's a great excuse to have another sip. Salud. And in a minute, we're going to have question and answers. Actually, we could do it now. Anybody have any questions? There we go. How could I forget my beautiful salmon? Look at that. So to present it, I'm just using a big spatula or two. And transferring it over. Ah, gorgeous. And you see that we have this lovely sauce, which now I'm going to give it another little stir, just to incorporate all those nice flavors. And maybe I will garnish it with a little fresh dill. And, oops, flick and a mop for later. A little fresh dill on the top, just on one center. And those rest of those lovely cucumbers. That way we know what's inside of it, but still leave plenty of room to dip our spoon in it. It's gonna go right there. And then of course, you can choose to toss the entire bowl of salad, or you can serve yourself and just drizzle. I'll leave that up to you. And this frittata, so pretty. I'm going to loosen him up just a little. Oh. And the fun part of, because this is a family meal, you can just serve it right off the buffet like this. Now, the longer it sits, the more it's going to be sturdy, but for purposes of a beautiful presentation, I'm going to cut a little piece out of it. Oh, gorgeous. Steaming hot. Let's do, oh boy, and look at that. It's all ready. Everything is ready at the same time. Fluffy, light, fragrant. Beautiful. You can see the steam rising up on it. Gorgeous. All right. All we need is a bunch of potatoes and maybe some bacon. All right. So here's a plate. I'll serve one up for Steve. And it comes right out. That's what I love about this skillet. It comes right up. There we go.
Chef Babe.
Chef Babe. That's right. Make sure that we get this out of the way. Don't you hate to forget when something is hot and you touch it? All right. Oh, there we go. Add a little pretty presentation. Maybe we're going to add a little extra piece of dill to our platter. And we've got our gorgeous frittata. There we go. Bon appetit.